Today we are covering the Azure Solution Accelerators. We've had a few events rolling these out over the past, 3 months. Just to give you an overview of the solution accelerators, let me go ahead and share my desktop out as well. These are documents. Well, let me go ahead and share out my desktop, and we'll talk about what they are. But as an organization, SMB, we've invested heavily over the past 3 months in investing in solution accelerators, and basically they're step-by-step documents on how to deploy, implement Microsoft solutions, right? Whether it's Microsoft solutions on Azure, whether it's trying to set up a hybrid cloud with Azure, creating that VPN connection up into Azure. A lot of times our partners go to azure.com and you see all these different solutions that you can purchase. A lot of times we use the analogy, a set of ingredients, but you don't really know what to build. Well, we tried to help you, assist you with that effort with the solution accelerators, and really think of them as playbooks that, or recipes, if you want to keep the food analogy, that provide you and your technical staff step-by-step instructions on setting up key solutions on Azure. When it's Azure, when it's talking about transacting and selling Azure as a partner, you have to focus on solutions. What can you do? Really, what technology are you good at delivering to your customers that runs on Azure? So I think sometimes we try to bite off a little more than we can chew by going to Azure and just immediately trying to, digest it all. Whereas let's just focus on these solution accelerators to get started. Stuff like hybrid cloud and managing identity for our customers, or BCDR. That's our third one, business continuity and disaster recovery. So I'm going to quickly just go over all of these solution accelerators, all three of the ones that we've invested in as an organization. We are part of SMB&D, and we actually funded these solution accelerators. And let me go ahead and bring this up so I can, looks like Keith is not hearing anything. I don't know, Jenny, if you're on, if you could help Keith out, but it looks like, let me just type, may have to dial in. There we go. So we funded these solution accelerators and funded our MCS group, Microsoft Consultancy, the consultant services, and they're the ones who built them, so the pros, right? And we basically funded them and said, hey, we're an SMB organization. We focus on the channel partners and small businesses. Can you create some solution accelerators for that space? So our objective, obviously, is to get our partners acclimated with Azure and give you some solutions, prepackaged solutions that you can quickly adopt and start selling that leverage Azure. Benefits to partners is you don't have to, as a partner, you can decide, gosh, I love this hybrid cloud. I want to start building VPNs to Azure, extending data centers, but then you spend half a day, full day, searching TechNet for the right way to do it. You might search several different places, finally coming up with your playbook. We've made the playbook for you. Take it, install it, give it to a technical person. Maybe that's you. And let us know what you think. And generally with our solution accelerators, depending on experience, we say, gosh, it could take anywhere from 4 hours to 8 hours to implement these. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback, right? People saying, gosh, those that have already done hybrid cloud say, well, if I would have had this, a month ago, this would have saved me a full day of work. Or the ones that use the accelerator to set up their hybrid cloud say, gosh, it was so simple, easy. Now we have our data center connected to Azure, and this is something certainly we can bring to our customers as well. So here's our favorite analogy. with the ingredients. Some might say an overused analogy on Azure, but it's basically Azure. Think of Azure the far left. It's just a set of ingredients that has really confused a lot of our partners. Overwhelmed, I think, is a better word. There's just so much you can do on Azure. So let's focus. Let's focus on the solutions we offer, and then just pick and choose the Azure components that support that. And the far right here is the recipe. That's the solution accelerator, and gives you the recipe to take the ingredients and build your solutions on Azure. So pretty, pretty straightforward analogy there. So what are we? What are the solution accelerators themselves? I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking about the investments of the solution accelerators. Then we'll actually go into the browser and I'll show you the solution accelerators. And I think a good goal after today, get your questions answered on, if you have any regarding the accelerators, and then as an action item, take these and take them and run and see if you can roll them out, implement them internally, and let us know your feedback. So the accelerators we're currently invested in today, hybrid cloud. That's the first one we came out with. I blogged about it on our TS2 blog, and we've got a page dedicated to it. This is basically setting up that VPN connection. So you take your customer site and we go to the customer and say, you know what? It's time to extend your data center. In the scenarios we typically run into is some customers have the data center down the hallway, right? And they're running out of capacity. The room in the hallway is, down the hallway is, always 102 degrees in there, and it's just not equipped to manage the server load. Or perhaps the customer already moved their data center to a co-located facility with one of the traditional hosters, but they're paying a lot, right? And they have this monthly bill. They don't think they're getting the value in what they're paying because it's traditionally been a very expensive space, the co-location market. So they could be there, or maybe they're hosting it in your data center. You're running out of capacity, and you want to offload. Maybe some of the hardware is aging. You want to find a suitable place for their servers. Well, we call this hybrid cloud, and the first step is to create that virtual network in Azure. This is your network space, and you can there's a GUI to do it. It's pretty straightforward, and you can define your network subnets, and then it could extend the scheme of your on-premises or your customer's existing data center, and then you would create that site-to-site VPN. So the site-to-site VPN is it's a component of the virtual network, right? And the firewall in Azure is your virtual network. That's where you're managing this VPN, and then the endpoint is your customer or your firewall, right? And in the firewall that you want, you can connect to pretty much any firewall. Just know, and this is an important point, we support, and to do more of our advanced functions, you want a modern firewall with that supports dynamic routing. So if you, because we want your firewall, we want the VPN connection to use IKE version 2, which supports dynamic routing. That way you can do multiple site-to-site VPN connections to the same virtual network. So the example is, say I have a customer, they have 3 offices dispersed throughout a region, or maybe even across continents, who knows. But the example is, well, we want to, they have trouble communicating and getting into each other's VPNs and whatnot. We want one centralized data center that everyone connects to. So you can create a VPN connection, a site-to-site VPN from each one of the customer's locations up into Azure. In Azure is their centrally managed data center, and that's a common scenario. You need to the firewalls need to support dynamic routing in order for that to for them to have multiple VPNs. If they don't support dynamic routing, just have a firewall that supports static routing. The main culprit of this one is the Cisco ASA. That's come up a few times. They can do one site-to-site VPN per virtual network. You can't do multiple, but you can get a static route working from one VPN to up into Azure. So once you have your VPN established, you've got your virtual network established. You have your data center, you have your colo, and you could start moving resources up there. The first one you're probably going to want to do, and this is covered in the Solution Accelerator, is let's spin up a domain controller. Let's go into our Active Directory tools. I believe it's the sites application, and create another site, right? And then spin up a domain controller in our Azure data center. Now we have a site. It's the domain controller is replicating over the site-to-site VPN, and now we can start moving domain dependent resources up into Azure. So the Solution Accelerator covers that: creating the virtual network, creating the site-to-site VPN, and then moving resources moving a domain controller up into Azure. And once you have that established, you've got this hybrid cloud going, and the possibilities are endless, right? We could take the next step would maybe we have a web application that's on this old Windows Server 2003 box. Let's move that up into Azure, and chances are the web application relies on Active Directory. Well, that's fine because we moved a domain controller up there. And even if we don't move an application up there, we now have a co-located facility that has redundant. We've made our Active Directory redundant. Now they have a domain controller elsewhere. So if their main site goes down, we can rely on Azure. So hybrid cloud, we see this as the starting point for most projects with customers. Once you enable hybrid cloud, now you're enabling the quick spin up of additional virtual machines. Why? Because your network's connected. Customer network is connected, and they can access the virtual machines that you spin up. But the first step always is to set up that hybrid cloud. So the second component of the hybrid cloud solution accelerator is automation, and I think this is pretty cool, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback on it. So you did everything I just talked about. You set up the hybrid cloud, the VPN, the virtual network, maybe even a domain controller up there. How do we repeat this with our customers? Okay, how do we really drive down the cost of sale, cost of implementation, by making this a repeatable, easy, scriptable process? And the second part of the Solution Accelerator covers Azure automation. So we've automated the process of setting this up. So you set it up typically through the GUI, just point and click and kind of figuring out the components for the first time in your own environment, and then you go to the automation part and say, gosh, I can actually automate this and just run these scripts, and it sets up the VPN, it sets up the subnetting, and you'll put change a few variables in the scripts. So check that out. It's a huge time saver, and then it makes it a real solution once you get the scripting part done and using Azure automation that you could use when onboarding new customers. I have partners that first step. Every customer on Azure as well. Gosh, if we're going to start using Azure VMs, we're going to have to create this hybrid cloud and extend your data center. Now, sometimes we have customers that want to just go 100% cloud, say, I want to get rid of everything. I want to go to the cloud. You ever hear that? It's amazing how often we hear that in SMB. Typically, you're saying, yes, we'll get there, but we're going to set up a hybrid cloud first because you have this, and this running on premises, and we're not quite ready to move that to the cloud. Sometimes that's how we see it. So only because we have a half hour today, and so let me move on to the other solution accelerators. The second one is identity management here. And this one is, you don't have to set up the hybrid cloud. I recommend doing the hybrid cloud first, but identity management really covers, focuses on hybrid cloud, but from an Active Directory perspective. You've got on-premises Active Directory, which just about every single one of our customers has, right? And then you have Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is our cloud-based identity management solution. And And really, this solution accelerator covers syncing the two, right? Installing our directory synchronization tools that will take your users and and a lot of your different AD on premises fields and sync them up into Azure Active Directory. I always ask customers, or partners, I'll be in a room and presenting to partners saying, how many of you are using Azure Active Directory? Nobody raises their hand, maybe one guy. How many of you are on Office 365? Just about everyone raises their hand. Well, you're using Azure Active Directory, right? Office 365 uses Azure Active Directory. And so this opens up a ton of doors for our partners because you already have, chances are, some Office 365 customers, and they don't know it, but they're already using Azure Active Directory. So once you get this synchronization going and set up the proper identity synchronization with password sync, now users can leverage Azure Active Directory. What does that give them? Well, Azure Active Directory, think of Azure Active Directory, users have access to it in Office 365 just by going into the admin console, but then you can log into Azure and have access to your Azure Active Directory. You could take your Office 365 admin credentials, go to azure.com and log in, and then it'll say you don't have a subscription. You just put in a credit card or sign up for a trial, and then you have access to your Azure Active Directory that supports your Office 365. But we get so much more with Azure Active Directory, or you can even enable Azure Active Directory Premium to get some more advanced features, right? Like multi-factor authentication, advanced reporting, and then we get my favorite feature is the SaaS integration, the software as a service integration. This enables us to use our Azure Active Directory credentials to gain access to over 2,500 software as a service applications, Microsoft and mainly non-Microsoft. So you could use your Azure Active Directory credentials, which is our cloud-based identity solution, to access Salesforce.com, Dropbox, Box, AWS, Google, the Google platform, everything, right? So we're seeing a ton of interest there, and why we like identity management in Azure is because it gets our customers started on Azure. Now, it's not a lot of revenue on Azure. To be honest, Azure Active Directory is actually free on Azure because you're already using it in 365. But now they have an Azure footprint. You're in the admin console on their behalf, configuring their access to applications, and we call it the gateway into Azure. Now once they're using Azure Active Directory, they're more likely to start spinning up VMs, using backup, and various other things. So speaking of backup, because we have 12 minutes left, the third solution accelerator is the BCDR solution accelerator. That's business continuity and disaster recovery. And this is our most recent one. And really what the BCDR accelerator covers, and let me go ahead and bring up a slide. I've kind of skipped slides today, but we'll bring this one up just to give you an idea. It covers really three components of think of it as our general high-level backup, business continuity, disaster recovery solution where you can leverage Azure. Right, and this is how I'm saying, and this is a direct result of how we saw partners leveraging Azure for BCDR. First, we have disaster recovery. You may or may not be familiar with Azure Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery is our disaster recovery solution built on Azure. What is it? Right now, and there's two flavors. There's what we have right now and then what we have really soon. What we have right now is you have Hyper-V running on premises in your environment, in your customer's environment. Hyper-V has a bunch of VMs running on it, right? You can take, using Azure Site Recovery, you can replicate those VMs up into Azure for DR. Basically, you do a replication schedule. It could be 15 minutes, every 5 minutes, every 30 seconds. And those VMs are replicating up into Azure, and they're sitting offline for DR purposes. And you can you basically pay $54 a month per VM. And then we can get some nice margin on that when we purchase Azure through Open. As you may already know, you could buy Azure credits through your distributor, but it's $54 a month, and then you also have to pay for some storage if you're for your VMs. And then if a disaster ever occurs and you want to spin up your VM in Azure, then you pay standard runtime charges depending on what size that VM is. That's Azure Site Recovery today. What's coming very soon is the ability to replicate VMware VMs running on a VMware host, and the ability to replicate physical servers up into Azure. And that's using a tool set that we bought not too long ago, the InMaj tools. And those are it's a company we acquired. They were leaders in VM migration and replication, and we've integrated it into our tool set. So that's the Azure Site Recovery piece. We're seeing a lot of excitement around that. A lot of partners adopting this DR solution. It's what the advantage is. You enable it, you're up and running with DR. No big capital investment. You just start replicating to Azure. Your customer has a DR solution. You didn't have to purchase hardware and purchase a device or anything on premises. Then there's storage. This one comes up a lot as well. Many of our great partners are, you're already experts in backup, and you've been recommending tools to your customers for years. For backing up their data, right, and maybe even replicating their VMs. There's tons of a very mature market out there in SMB. So it's a safe assumption to say most of our partners already have tools that they're using. So we say, well, consider Azure to work with those tools. Use Azure Blob Storage. An example would be the Veeam backup solution has a Cloud Connect add-on in the latest version, and you can simply connect to Azure Blob Storage. So you're not using Azure Backup, the backup service. You're not using Azure Site Recovery. You're just using raw blob storage. You're connecting to Azure. That's fine. We like this because it gets your customers started in Azure, right? And really all the replication, all the the size of the files, whether the data is encrypted, that's all handled by your third-party backup tool. You're just putting it up into Azure Blob Storage. Just know, once you put your backups up into Azure Blob Storage, if you do restore and pull down that data, you're paying egress charges because it's just raw blob storage. When you use Azure Blob Storage, you pay a very low fee for the storage. Blob storage is really cheap, right? Price per gigabyte, depending on the type of storage you have. We have different tiers, and then you're paying for egress. So we don't charge for anything you throw in Azure, but once you pull it out, we charge like 8 cents a gig per month. So it's pretty inexpensive, and generally is a low fee. But if you're pulling out terabytes and terabytes, it could add up. So that's the blob storage piece that's covered in the Solution Accelerator. And then finally, there's Azure Backup. This is our finished backup service. You would use this instead of your third-party tools. Some partners are leading with Azure Backup. For example, when you spin up a VM in Azure with the data drive, you say, well, we're already on Azure. I'm going to use Azure Backup to back up that data drive. Or maybe you have some smaller customers, maybe they have one server, 2 Windows servers, and you say, you know what, we're not going to use our existing tools for this. It's too small. Let's just go ahead and go to azure.com. Let's create an account for them and quickly enable Azure Backup for them. And it's just an offline backup solution. So it'll back up their data drives into Azure. Right, and we've been investing heavily. We've got, we've recently announced more recovery points on the backup. I think we have now 366 recovery points for each backup item, up from 120, and then so that's improving. So we can keep our copies a little bit longer on the Azure Backup solution, and we've made some updates to the tool itself. So those are the 3 solution accelerators. I'll go ahead and show you where they are, and feel free. I mean, I've done enough talking. Feel free to ask questions. It looks like we've got quite a few people on here. So shoot with your questions, and then if I don't hear anything, I'll just go ahead and open up a browser, and I'll show you the accelerators. And if you don't want to talk or unmute yourself, just go ahead and put it in the chat window as well. All right, quiet crew. Let's go ahead and just go up to the browser here, and I'll show you the accelerator. Here is the hybrid cloud solution accelerator that I blogged about, and this is just a 5-minute video of me basically going over what I just went over. And then you scroll down, and basically the components of the hybrid cloud solution accelerator are one second here, our executive brief. Read this. This is for you to get buy-in. Is this really something I want to invest in? I want to invest, half a day, a full day of one of my technical resources. So it kind of goes over what I talked about, the reason why you'd want to set up hybrid cloud and why it opens up a lot of doors into Azure. And then there's the deployment guide. This is the nuts and bolts. This is the step-by-step that you follow. So this is what you would put in your technical person's hands. And then here's some of the scripting stuff. Remember I talked about Azure Automation? Well, these are the scripts that's going to make it real, right? And make it repeatable for new customers that you add. And then the addendum just is further reference. So let's go ahead and click on the link, and let's see where that takes us. This is the, let's give this a second to load. This is taking us to the actual solution accelerator where it's downloaded on the partner network. See, and then I hit download, and all those, it's just a bunch of files. So you'll log in. I think you have to fill something out, and you'll log in, download it, and you'll have all the different files. Have at it, right? That's an important one. Get started with the hybrid cloud. Here is the, just for the sake of time, got a couple minutes. Here is the identity one. Same, I have a video. And then if we go to just a description of what we're doing here, I didn't show this graphic, but this is really an important one. This has Azure Active Directory as the center of our universe, right? For users, we have on-prem Active Directory syncing with it. We've got users connecting to Azure AD with their devices, and then we have all these applications that connect to Azure AD as well. So we really envision Azure Active Directory as being, it's going to be synonymous with really just managing identity, not just cloud identity, but identity for your users, because it integrates so tightly with on-premises Active Directory. So if I click on that link, it's going to take me to the actual files here on the partner network. If I go ahead and I hit download, it's going to, again, I'm going to have to fill out a form. Hey, I'm downloading this. We do that so we can track how many people are downloading this stuff. And then finally, BCDR, business continuity, disaster recovery, very similar to what I talked about. This one has a lot more documents. Right here, you'll see. Just know the getting started guide walks you through everything. Just read the getting started guide, and it'll tell you why we have all of these different components. Like the solution brief, for example, is if you're trying to get buy-in from people and you just want like a one-pager on why this investing in the solutions accelerator is important. But I think the most important ones are the this one, how-tos. The 3 how-tos. This one, standard workload scenario, and then if you want to back up SQL, we have guidance on SQL. If you want to back up Active Directory and make Active Directory, have a DR plan for AD and a backup plan for AD, it's in that guide. So we've invested heavily in these. We had to pay a lot to get these created, but we're seeing them take off amongst our SMB partner ecosystem. So my ask is, if you need links to these, you'll find them on the TS2 blog. So just honestly, the way I find it, just go TS2 blog. Just go and do a Bing search, Google search for TS2 blog. You'll be directed to our blog site, and then you do a search for solution accelerators, and they're all up there. And and hopefully you'll get some value out of them. We love getting feedback.